Hi, everyone. Welcome back to UCLA Health's Medically Speaking. I'm your host, Dr. Eve Glazier. Do you ever wonder how that medication your doctor prescribed seems to magically appear in your hospital room or appear right at your bedside in the ER hallway? Or what journey that pill took to get from your doctor's prescription pad all the way to your medicine cabinet? When you think about it, there are so many medications out there. Antibiotics, pain relievers, chemo infusions, anesthesia, and then add in vitamins, supplements, herbs. It's honestly a miracle we can keep them all straight. And knowing what to prescribe, what dose, what not to mix, it's a whole science in itself. Here's the truth. We doctors couldn't do it without the expertise of our pharmacist partners. And they might not always be in the spotlight, but without them, let me assure you, the entire healthcare system would grind to a halt. Joining me today to share what the world looks like from behind the counter and beyond is Dr. Melissa Dinolfo. She's a board-certified oncology pharmacist, and she recently retired as Director of Pharmacy Services at UCLA Health, and she's a dear, dear friend and mentor. Mel, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Mel, you worked as a pharmacist for 42 years.
Correct.
And you've did everything, right? From spending time behind the counter at a drugstore, conducting research on life-saving cancer medications, and then running a very large pharmaceutical operation at UCLA Health. But I want to start at the beginning. What drew you to pharmacy in the first place?
Throughout high school, well, my mom was a nurse, and my mom was emphatic that I should not be a nurse. And I had this vague inclination towards something medical. And about 2 weeks before I graduated from high school, a friend of mine was working behind the counter in By Right Pharmacy in La Habra, California, and said that they needed somebody. So I went in, and this pharmacist interviewed me. He's very like buttoned down, very bright, very intense guy, and he threw a prescription pad on the counter, and he said, "Can you read this?" And I said, "Yeah, that's Valium." Which I could read.
Suspicious.
Well, I had helped my mom. She
Yeah.
worked in a doctor's office. I'd done back office when I was in college. So anyway, he hired me, and after a year or two, I declared as a biology major, and I was at the local state college or state university. And after a year or two, I thought, I could do this. I can do this. Whereupon he said, "Melissa, women don't belong in pharmacy. You should be a dental hygienist." And that was all it took.
Yeah, of course.
I was like, I don't think you need a Y chromosome to count pills. So I believe I can do this.
Yes.
And that was what it took to kind of cut through all the BS and realize that I was eminently capable of doing it. And so I kind of put my head down and bowled through and miraculously got into pharmacy school 2 years later. And that was it.
Well, besides knowing that you were obviously incredibly capable, what appealed to you about sort of the pharmacy?
There's an intimacy,
Yeah.
even in a retail setting, between a pharmacist and the patient. Many patients utilize their pharmacist as an interim.
They certainly do.
How messed up am I? Do I need to move on? So your job is to point them in the proper direction, and if they're in trouble and they need to go to the ER or whatever, then that's what you tell them.
Right.
But if you can, I've always been very comfortable recommending over-the-counter things.
Yes.
That's kind of the zone in retail.
Yeah.
So I would go behind the counter and tell them what I thought they should use, and I enjoyed that role, and I enjoyed the responsibility, and I liked helping people. I always have.
Yeah, and you could feel that even then, as you were
absolutely.
embarking. That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
What did you need to then kind of get started in terms of going through the pharmacy school route?
It's
Besides a sense of humor.
that was rare,
Right,
actually.
and moxie.
That's probably
Yeah.
how I got in, because the year that I applied, they were looking for communicators. Because they realized that all these pharmacists know all this stuff, but they can't communicate anything. They're all kind of locked in, kind of robotic.
I'm impressed that they recognize that as a criterion.
Well, that was the school that I ended up, by the grace of God, getting into happened to be very innovative.
Yeah.
And they were they're the ones who coined the term clinical pharmacy, which is what I became. So in the early 70s, late 60s, they thought to themselves, we'd like to put pharmacists at the bedside. We'd like to incorporate them into the medical teams. So I fell into this just completely serendipitously.
You're like surreptitiously and serendipitously.
It wasn't sneaky. It was lucky.
No, that's so interesting. So
Yeah.
clinical pharmacist was like a new term at the time?
Big time. Yeah.
I just want to break down for everyone kind of what clinical pharmacist means, because, I'm a total language nerd, but also it's like, it's a great barrier. But like, so clinical isn't just about science, interestingly, because you mentioned it was at the bedside, and it comes from that Greek root, klinike, which is, at the sick bed.
Right.
And then clinical, I think people, again, this isn't just about like the science, this is about presence, right? Like being present. So like when someone really sees you, makes recommendations, whether it's in a retail pharma, but then kind of tailors treatments to who you are. And so when I think of you as saying clinical pharmacist, and I didn't realize that the school was also kind of espousing that really means then a pharmacist who is attending to patients like next to them at their bedside, like right next to them. Anyways, that's really neat how that term came about, but that actually was kind of the cornerstone of how you were educated.
Yeah. When I got into school, before I started, they sent this letter. It was almost like a consent form. And it basically said, you need to know if you go here that you may be required to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to attend rounds.
Really?
And you may be working extended hours, and you may do this. And it was so electrifying. I read that letter, and I was like, oh my God, this is where I belong.
That's amazing.
This is exactly what I
Right.
want to do. I don't want to, I mean, I could have lived behind a counter. I could have worked in retail my whole life. But the idea that I could be inserted into a team that managed patient care at a more dynamic and challenging level,
Right, and acute.
was
right.
it was thrilling. So I got up there, I just had stars in my eyes. It was great.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Wait, so then tell me then. So after then pharmacy school, where did you kind of first start working?
Well, the first thing that they started by the time I graduated in 81, they were doing what are now called PGY, Pharmacy Graduate Year Residencies. I think that's what it stands for. So after I got my doctorate, I did 1 year at UCSF as a resident. And that was really fascinating because you go from being a student and overnight you've become like a shot caller.
Right.
So in my residency, I spent 3 months on an orthopedic surgery pain management service, and in pain management, you want someone who is always, we want one decision maker in terms of handling narcotics. And so on the team, the pharmacist was the decision maker. So I designed tapers, and I would order things, and if people had it.
Like a taper is when you gradually decrease a medication. Okay.
And if somebody, I remember a patient who was an amputee, they hit him when they were moving him, and they called me. It was very interesting, but it also really boosted my confidence and my sense of what I could contribute.
Sure.
So after that year, then I moved down to Southern California, and I got my first job in a hospital. Nothing spectacular. I can remember the first few weeks going, well, this is ridiculous, but I'll go back to school in September. And then realized I couldn't. I was never going back to school. I was stuck in the workplace. So I wasn't a big fan of this place, but December of that year, I saw this ad in the LA Times, and it was for just the dream job. It was be the first clinical pharmacist at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. So I applied, even though I'd only been at the other hospital for 5 months.
I love that it was an ad in the Times.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody my entire residency class, we all applied.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like Bambi. I go out and I go, you guys, there's this great job. And half of them applied and not said anything to anybody. I was like, you guys. So then when
I love how you're curbing your language right now. I know you.
I'm trying really hard, yeah. This is a massive effort on my part.
Don't worry, we appreciate it.
But so anyway, I got the gig,
Yeah.
which was fascinating. And so I started at St. John's, and pretty much my entire career unspooled from there.
Yeah.
So I was the first quote-unquote clinical pharmacist that they had hired. So the rest of the pharmacy team was buried in the basement, which is always where they put us.
Why?
Mostly because of security.
Really?
Yeah, because most people know that's where the narcotics are. So there's no signage typically to get to the hospital pharmacy. There's bulletproof glass. There's security doors.
Oh my gosh!
And we're all kind of like laboring down there, like trolls under the bridge.
For your own safety.
Yeah. So it was a little, at least there was light,
Yes.
but it was a little grim.
Right.
But one of the things that my school had espoused was something called decentralized pharmacy, where you put satellite pharmacy locations throughout the hospital. So I opened the first one at St. John's, which abutted, I think it was the CCU and possibly MedSurg.
Okay. Those are all like the cardiac care unit and
Yes.
different parts of the hospital. I don't think people realize that there's pharmacists, all over. And I think obviously because we're hiding you, but obviously but also because, right. But that they accompany and are often on the same floors catering, especially to different clinical teams. Like you mentioned orthopedics and, I want to talk about how you, went into oncology, but I think it's interesting that people probably don't even realize that there's pharmacists often in the emergency room.
Yeah.
Right. And is that so that people can get like medication like more directly to people, or what's the point of having the satellites, like that they're all over, distributed all over, let's say, a hospital?
Well, to your point that you made earlier about the massive number of medications
Yes.
and the decisions that need to be made, when you're embedded in the place where those decisions are being made, you can be impactful in a timely manner. You're not calling somebody 2 hours later and
Right.
saying, "Doctor, the dose you ordered for this patient is a little high because their renal function is poor." You have an opportunity to be part of that while decisions are being made.
Right.
And also in the hospital setting, we have some responsibility to make sure drugs are available. And there could be 10 or 12 or 15 drugs in one class.
Yes.
And we don't typically carry 10 or 12 or 15. We might carry 4 or 5, and we find justifications for choosing the ones we carry.
Yeah.
So sometimes just being able to say, we don't have that here, the equivalent is X, Y, or Z.
Right. I don't think
That
people
helps a lot.
understand how much like kind of dialogue there is with pharmacists. So for example, you mentioned, taking into account someone's renal function, and that's fancy for how well someone's kidneys are working.
Exactly.
I mean, I cannot tell you how many times pharmacists saved my bacon. I want to say mostly when I was a resident, but even today, I get calls from retail pharmacy or calls from our pharmacists at UCLA who are like, did you make sure that, you took into account this person's kidney function, because the way patients metabolize, you can say this much better than I can, but metabolize certain drugs, then if it's slower, faster, or weirder, that then informs how much or how little of the medication. I always rely on pharmacists to help me prescribe. And my goodness, when I was a resident, I mean, the amount of times I was paged and said, in the nicest way possible, someone would say, "Dr. Glazier, did you mean like 10 or 100? And I'm not saying this to scare people who are in the hospital, but it's just really to say, we have these expert safeguards, who are really, really contributing to this clinical care.
Right. And it gives us great joy to do that.
See,
I mean,
I'm glad it does.
Just to be able to be impactful in
Yes.
a positive way and be able to direct care and be able to prevent problems as opposed to trying to solve them on the back end.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's so pivotal to my role. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that very much.
But translate oncology research for our listeners.
So basically, any drug that you have ever received
yes.
in a prescriber setting has been intensively reviewed by research. It started in a lab where that compound was created,
Right.
and then frequently it enjoyed kind of a foray into animal testing.
And enjoyed.
Yeah, the dogs and cats might,
Right.
or the animals may not have enjoyed it, but it's always done humanely.
Yes.
And it's very hard to justify introducing a novel compound into a human being
Very hard.
if something else that's living hasn't already received it.
Right.
So a compound starts in a lab, then it moves into the animal setting, and then there's something called first in human. And there are 3 phases to drug development. Phase 1 is when the drug moves from the lab/animal setting into the human beings. And I have stood at a bedside and watched the first human ever take something.
Oh my God.
It's an incredible experience. And he did well, actually, thank God. But
I mean, how long did you stand there?
for a while. Yeah. A while. It was amazing.
Yeah, it is
It's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
So phase 1 is first in human, and then phase 2, all compounds don't go on. Sometimes there's a problem in phase 1.
Right.
Sometimes there's a side effect that we didn't know we would see or whatever. But if a compound goes on to phase 2, it typically has found to be safe.
Yes.
And phase 2 is to look at how effective it is. So if it makes it through phase 2, then it goes to phase 3, where they prove that it is as good, minimally, or better than the existing treatments. And this is a very robust area in oncology. When I went to pharmacy school in the 70s, there were like 4 chemotherapy drugs.
Oh, wow.
There are now 300. So it's a phenomenon to be part of that, and the different categories of drugs. And all of those came up while I have almost a parental relationship with some of these drugs, because I was like, oh, I knew you when you were phase 1. I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I decided that I would go into that, and because a friend of mine was an oncologist and his practice was looking for a part-time pharmacist who could be their research pharmacist. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. It was really hard.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got the gig because no one else wanted it. And after about 3 weeks, I found out why. But that's where I met Dr. Rosen, Lee Rosen, who was running the phase 1 program for this private
UCLA
practice.
Health oncologist.
Yes.
Yeah?
Well, he wasn't at that
Not that
point
time, yeah, but now.
Yeah, but anyway, so I started working with Lee, and I was part of the phase 1 team, and we ended up going out into private practice. And I stayed with him throughout that. And then UCLA acquired our practice probably 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been an oncology pharmacist, 24 years,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So, but I loved it, and I loved the it has a lot of meaning. And when something bad happens to someone, to be able to have a positive impact is incredibly comforting, and especially if it's someone you know. So I've worked, I don't even consider it work, I have given to people that I care for a respite and a place to be terrified and to work through what's going on with them medically.
Yeah.
And I consider that to be an incredible honor.
It's an honor for you, but it's an incredible gift for everyone else, and I've seen that play out with so many of your patients.
Thank you.
So with the oncology pharmacy, I want to say that's a pharmacy, and because you had a very large management role in managing what we call oncology pharmacy, which is the all of the medications for the cancer care, right, at UCLA Health. Did you work in the hospital setting, kind of that you were describing before during training, or is this in an outpatient, or what we say ambulatory, meaning like a clinic or an office setting?
Right. So it's basically pre and post. Before I had my kids, I was only in the hospital setting once I graduated. So I worked at St. John's. I did a brief stint at UCLA.
Right.
And then when I came back into the workplace, I moved into ambulatory care.
Right.
Now, ambulatory care in California particularly, but has gotten very sophisticated. The goal is to be able to deliver care that historically patients may have required being hospitalized to get, but to create a system that is robust enough and flexible enough and safe enough that you can use compounds and treat people, and then they get to go home.
Yeah.
They don't have to sit in the hospital for 3 more
Exactly.
days. So when I went back to work, I went back into the ambulatory setting.
Yeah.
And all of the practices that I worked in through there were all oncology-based, except, UCLA got a broader role. But the oncology-based practices, we would bring patients in to the clinic,
Right.
and we would treat them there.
Right.
So.
And I only bring this up because I think lots of times there's an assumption that pharmacists are only existing behind the counter, in a retail pharmacy. But there's pharmacists all over the healthcare system.
There are pharmacists that are supporting prisons, rest homes, SNFs.
Right, skilled nursing facilities,
skilled nursing facilities. We're everywhere. You just don't typically
You're
know.
everywhere.
Yeah.
You talk about what it's an honor it is for you to be part of someone's care. I've known you a long time, and so I think kind of you have many, many superpowers, but it's true. But one of the biggest ones I think is your just incredible skill at communicating, and not just communicating, but communicating with so much compassion, and then obviously then interweaving kind of your expertise. But I would love to hear about how and you mentioned that the communication was actually thankfully a required, or at least encouraged skill when you were applying to pharmacy school. But I'd love to hear from you how it's kind of manifested in your role as a pharmacist, like. where do you sort of kind of wield that beautiful sword?
Wield is a good word. So one of the things that I've discovered, probably the most impactful example, is patients with cancer diagnosis come in and they've been imprinted by whatever horrible thing happened to somebody in their family 20 years before. And they come in terrified, as I would be, expecting to suffer. And when they enter, and also if they're going into the research setting, they think that it's hopeless and they're only doing it for the greater good. So there's a lot of learning that people need to be encouraged to do. And myself and kind of the other mid-level practitioners, the nurse practitioners, some practices use physician assistants, kind of where we dwell, at least my role that I believe, is to help patients unpack their history and not combine it with their current situation, and realize that most patients won't tell their doctor what they're feeling. They don't want them to take their eye off of focusing on the care, taking care of the cancer, so they'll conceal the most minor, all these little things that they're struggling with. They have, splitting fingers, their fingers and toes are broken. They have sores in their mouths. They're nauseated all the time. They're constipated. They don't confess all that to the doctor because they don't want to distract them.
What are they worried about? Like that?
Mostly, I think, in the research setting, patients are concerned that if they tell you about a side effect, that they may no longer be able to continue on the trial.
It's a terrible calculus.
It is. It is. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
So part of my role is to I basically told people that my role is to fix everything I can, because I kind of dwell in symptom management, and that if you ignore these little things, it becomes the death of 1,000 cuts, and you let me address them with you. Let me teach you how to manage them. And I've made deals with patients where I've said, do it my way for 2 days. If you don't feel better, we'll stop.
Yes.
But I really think you should try this. So my role, I think, pretty much, in my mind, the physician, designs the strategy.
Sure.
And I close. I remove any barriers towards somebody receiving something. They can be logistical, they can be financial, they can be, the side effects or allergic reactions. For my team, our goal was to just remove everything we could so people could get the care they needed. And it didn't matter whether or not it was pharmacy. I mean, if they can't afford something, that's my problem. And I'll fix that problem. And we used to. We did. Yeah.
No, I saw you do it a million a million times. And it's not, oh my goodness, it's not nothing, it's everything. Because exactly, it's the emotional barriers. And then it's not just like there's a static barrier. It's like one day it's a side effect. The other day it's an authorization, right? Like, how did you, I've seen you, but tell us how you even, how you've addressed those and challenged those barriers to even just getting the medications, that patients have needed and, that have been denied at first.
Well, and that's one thing I do want to reiterate for our listeners, which is don't ever take this kind of stuff laying down. If you're told by somebody that you can't get something, you need to find somebody who can override that.
Right.
Don't just take that and walk away. A lot of the insurance companies will deny something, and they know full well that people will get discouraged. But especially in the oncology setting, we don't mess around like that.
No.
So my team, we were very determined that everybody we should get whatever they needed. So we had very active fundraising, and we had an authorization department where we would just basically escalate. Okay, you said I couldn't do this. Can I speak to your supervisor? Okay, can I speak to this supervisor? And we would escalate things up the chain at the insurance company, and we would file appeals, and we would do everything we needed to do. And it's phenomenally rewarding. Yeah. And it also kind of helps you vent your aggression, because I have no difficulty coming down like the hammer of God on somebody who's going to try and take my patient's medication away from them.
Well, of course. And by the way, of course, don't take anything lying down. Easier for us not to take it lying down. Very hard to say that to someone who's already feeling like crap on chemotherapy and who's exhausted and terrified. So you're really that ultimate advocate. Yeah. You are really that pharmacist. You need a cape.
I know. There. I'll do the head toss.
That's incredible. yes, and I'm guessing, I mean, we're talking about just like prior authorizations, but what about like costs of medications and even just access to medications?
Well, was the second arm
Yeah.
of what we would do.
Yeah.
So the way insurance companies sleep at night, do I believe they should? No, not really, but I won't go any further. But they have what they term patient assistance. Now, in oncology, remember the process I described, phase 1, 2, and 3?
Sure.
It can take hundreds of millions of dollars to get a drug from phase 1 into the world. So part of what pricing is about is recouping that, because for every compound you get through, there are dozens that didn't. So part of it is they can sleep at night because they're charging $24,000 for one bottle of this stuff that lasts for 28 days.
Sorry, I just lost my breath.
I know. Is that they offer like copay cards and different things. Where the rubber hits the road is typically they don't offer those to the elderly.
Oh.
So our most vulnerable patients, our Medicare and Medi-Cal patients, the pharmaceutical companies don't have a venue for them, typically. Now, there are some that we have developed by dint of like threatening and cajoling and doing our part. But if you are a Medicare patient, until very recently, the donut hole would just chew your leg off. The idea that you could afford to pay $5,000 out of pocket every month for some kind of medication. So what the insurance companies do to save this part of the healthcare community that they've completely abandoned is they donate money to nonprofits. And they say to themselves, well, yeah, we don't help the Medicare patients, but they can apply to the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society, or they can apply to the Rare Drugs Foundation. There are all these different foundations that people have. Most patients don't have the wherewithal to do that.
Of course not.
But we do.
Right.
So we would just, my whole team should have worn capes.
Yeah.
We raise millions of dollars for people.
Right.
And by just not taking no for an answer, and by saying, partner with me, trust me.
Yes.
I'm going to help you fill out all this ridiculous paperwork where you have to put down the license plate of your first car and your kid's middle name and what color you wore to graduation.
Right.
I'll help you navigate all that, and we're not going to stop until we can get you what you need. So that's pretty much what we did.
Yeah, you're relentless in the best possible way.
Yeah, and it's so gratifying.
Yeah.
I remember one of my
But it also, I'll just say it's not just gratifying. It's not just like, oh, well, I'm grateful for your help. This is actually informs and impacts outcomes for how the patients actually do.
Big time.
Right.
Big time, yeah. No, it's a wonderful thing. One of my star persons on the team is a woman named Tamla Risher, and Tammy was trying to get a drug for a woman who was off-label, which is another place where insurance companies are like, oh, no, it's off-label. We can't approve it.
Can you define off-label?
Yes.
I can even use that.
When you research something, you develop it for one indication, and typically you'll test it for one thing. But that doesn't mean it won't work, and the FDA will approve it for that one thing. That does not mean that it won't work for other things. And oncology is stuffed with outliers. Because we're looking at the cellular biology of tumors and how they communicate and how they spread and how they become mutated or whatever, one drug can work for multiple types of tumors, but typically the way that the FDA approves them is for one type. So we often will have somebody who has the biological target that we're looking for, and you hear people talk about targeted therapies all the time, and I could talk about that for hours, but just know that multiple different kinds of cells can express a given target. So any drug that was identified in the research as working on that target for this particular kind of cancer can work on it for other kinds.
Right.
But the insurance companies can hide behind the labeling. They can say, well, this isn't indicated for your kind of cancer. So Tammy and I got on the phone with some pharmacist. I can't remember. We were trying to get a drug for a young woman, and she was like in her 30s, and she had the proper target, but we had blown through all these different levels with the insurance company, and I finally got on the phone with the pharmacist, and I walked her through. Tammy was in my office. I walked her through what the targets, my patient's cancer's biology was, and why I knew this would work. and got her to approve 2 months. She said,
Wow.
let's do 2 months, then we'll scan her again, but I agree with you. I know that this will work. Whereupon Tammy and I both burst into tears. We were so excited. But that's kind of that's why I love what I do.
Yeah, but it's amazing. Again, the superpower of your communication, it's like what you're saying. It's the trust with your patients, right? Because you're getting them to sort of trust you and say, look, let's just try this. And it's an ongoing dialogue, right? But then it's also the communicating with your peers, and no matter who they are,
Right.
like deep on the phone and
Yeah.
insurance companies. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you found it gratifying.
Oh, it's great. I'm having trouble not doing it, so I'm doing other things.
So that's why we're talking about it.
Well, yeah, and I do want to encourage people to ask more from their careers.
Yeah.
To expect more, not to just go. If you can I hired multiple people who had worked like in a CVS setting, and to a man, they would say, you rescued me, you saved my career. I was so miserable because some of these big box pharmacies are just, they have a certain quota they need to maintain, and so the pharmacists are expected to manifest all of these wonderful communication behaviors, but
Right.
meanwhile they have no time. So
Yeah.
so to be able to look for parts of your career, look for jobs in pharmacy where you can do what gives you joy,
Right.
and use your strengths, and don't take no for an answer.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's funny though that you say that too about just even, it's interesting when I go to our local pharmacy, I love hearing the pharmacist come out around, talk to the patient, honestly, sometimes to my shame, asking them more questions than I ask my own patient, right? And like really getting into, side effects, how are you taking it, with what food. But it reminds me too, because I love geeking out on, history, that, I think historically pharmacists were like the original medical providers,
Exactly.
right? And they would like walk around and go to people's bedside with little like wooden chests of medication. I love the word apothecary. You know what I mean? They were like the original providers. And in other countries, right? Like
Still are.
they still are.
Especially in poorer countries.
I think that's so fascinating. But speaking of that relationship, I think a lot of people, if I was listening to this, I'd be like, why isn't my pharmacist like Mel? And I think some people have these relationships, but what would you say about kind of forming a relationship with just your, again, we're not in the hospital now, but just your local pharmacist?
Well, one thing I would encourage people to do is if you have an option in your community that is not a big box, that is more of a mom and pop thing, you will find more opportunities to build a relationship in that setting,
Right.
than you will in a CVS or a Walgreens. So, those guys, God
Right.
bless them.
Right.
But if you have a mom and pop pharmacy,
Yeah.
wander in there one day.
Yeah. It's a
They could-
relationship like any other, right?
It's a big time relationship, and I frequent those little standalone.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll call themselves compounding, because that is one thing that.
What does
sets
that
them
mean? I always wonder.
Okay, so back in the day,
Yes.
before we had really sophisticated dosage forms, pharmacists literally prepared medication from scratch.
Like in a mortar and pestle?
Pretty much, yeah. I can remember like
Was this
stirring.
You remember
like
this? Oh my
spreading, yeah. I can remember spreading ointments on a marble slab and then putting them into containers.
God. Very romantic.
Okay, and that's one word for it. So those things are still sometimes required. It's
Yes.
a little bit of a niche thing, but like, let's say there are some products for chronic pain that neurologists want compounded that combine a nerve thing with an anesthetic thing with something else, and you have to create a compound out of that.
Oh, I see.
So compound pharmacies have special licensure, and they have special materials, and they make, many compound pharmacies, for example, make allergy serums, which are incredibly complex.
Yes.
So they're a necessary part of pharmacy
Right.
practice.
They're like mixing on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're basically creating things that,
Yeah.
that need to be in a different dosage form,
Yeah.
or combined.
No, it
in
sounds
some way.
incredibly necessary.
Yeah.
Speaking of pain management, and I will say to everyone, Mel has helped me out innumerable times when I've had patients, and listen, I've run out of ideas. I'm quite honest about it. I'm like, I don't know. They've already taken Tylenol or Advil, and they're having this kind of pain. And every time I call you, you always are so helpful. You're like, this for this particular type of bone pain, this particular class of medication works. So anyways, but and I know pain and pain management is a big part of what you've done, especially as an oncology pharmacist. And instead of saving it for our asking for a friend segment, I'm just going to throw it out now. Why, I do say this to my patients, but why do we always say, we don't want you chasing pain, right? Like we want to get ahead of it. Tell us why.
Oh, okay. Well, I have an analogy for that. I actually have two analogies for that I've worked with patients. And this is one of the things that I had experienced firsthand about how people expect to suffer with a cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
And they don't even, they lose hope, and they want to keep their eye on the ball towards a cure, and they're
Right.
willing to pay the piper. They're willing to suffer. But typically, especially now with the advent of all of these different drugs that support symptoms, you really don't need to do that, but you have to be encouraged.
You don't need to suffer.
You shouldn't.
Right.
You will ultimately every once in a while. You're not going to be comfortable 100% of the time. You
Right.
might have procedures that cause discomfort. You might have to sit in an MRI, which you're claustrophobic and you don't want to do that. There will be moments in time where you're uncomfortable,
Right.
but you shouldn't be in agony.
Right. No way.
Exactly. So one of the things I would meet patients who would say, well, I just wait until I can't stand it anymore, and then I'll take one Percocet. And I don't want to get too gender bound, but a lot of my patients were older. And so if it was an older woman, I would say, do you remember when your kids were little? And they would start to misbehave. And to a woman, the mom would go, yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, would you wait? And they were just climbing the walls before you did anything. And they would say, no, of course not. Mm-hmm. And I said, pain is the most badly behaved kid in the room. Go get it. Mm-hmm. And kind of empower them
Before
and make them right. And then so just basically incentivizing and encouraging them
right.
to get ahead of their pain. But also the science is that if you maintain pain,
yes.
you will use less narcotics than if you do this spiky agony relief cycle,
right.
because getting you out of agony is going to take more medication.
Oh my gosh, and so much energy. It is so much more exhausting as
right.
a patient.
And the apprehension about something like that
that's right.
makes control that much more daunting.
That's right.
You can't if you're terrified,
and the emotion about pain or like anticipating it.
Right. So it's and most patients, if you get them to like I said, the one guy where I said just do it my way for 2 days,
yeah.
if you empower them, this is a learning thing, just
yes.
like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that we don't want to. My heart goes out to people who come into an oncology diagnosis and go, I don't like medications.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, okay, dude,
yeah.
New day.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that anymore.
Right.
This is your problem. And
embrace the magic.
Yeah, we're
yes.
going to lean in.
Yes.
And, and we're not going to, you can draw lines in the sand,
right.
but that isn't going to work. Let's be practical.
Right. Yes, but and I know you're saying that, and you are. And though I've seen you have so many conversations where it's a conversation and it's
mm-hmm.
a dialogue, and we try something and then we try something mm-hmm. else, but also then address the concerns. Like you say, people come to the table with all of these other life events and emotions, and we ask people to uncouple them a little bit so that we can make it about them, but we can't ignore the fact if they've had experiences, or if they've seen family members suffer too. And people have different feelings about medications in general. I mean, even not just oncology medications, right?
Yeah.
I have so many patients who are like, my cholesterol's high, but, I don't want to take a medication.
Yeah.
Right?
And I possibly was one of those people.
Oh, sorry, I was asking for a friend.
But, I do whatever she says.
So I guess that's interesting. But as a pharmacist and a patient, what gets you there in terms of taking medications? What are questions you like to know before you take a medication?
Well, basically, I understand if I am eligible for something that I need it.
Yeah.
So that's not difficult for me particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try and do it without what I understand. It's better living through pharmacy as far as I'm concerned. So
always.
So
yes.
I would far rather not have, like I have a strong history of cardiac issues in my family. I'm not going down that way.
Right.
so it made perfect sense to me that I needed to take a statin. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at both my kids and knowing they will need to.
And statin is a cholesterol lowering drug.
Yes, it is.
But I also don't want to undermine people having concerns with their concerns. People are like, I don't want to have to take a pill. So it's just interesting to kind of from your kind of professional perspective, how do we get people to take what they need, and if they need it? We had a prior conversation around shared decision making, which was, and I don't know if you employ kind of that approach.
A little bit, yeah, sure.
How would you?
Well, so basically we get all this training
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which I've just basically been doing
You've
from
been
the
doing
gut
exactly
forever.
intuitively, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's shared decision making, but
Right.
my goal is you do what I tell you to do.
Benevolent dictator.
So, because I'm in your
yeah.
corner and I know
Yeah.
better, so let me
Yeah.
help
And you feel better,
Let
usually,
me get
if you're in
you
the
there.
prescribing. Yeah.
Let me get you there.
Yeah.
Let me walk with you until you're comfortable.
Yes.
And make this
And I've seen you. You don't leave their side.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway, so basically the idea that we would partner with people is something I've been doing my entire career.
Yes.
And I think the other thing we haven't talked about
Yeah.
is cultural stuff.
Tell me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We did a clinical trial when I was in private practice with Dr. Rosen with this drug that had come out of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And we started giving it to our patients, and to a man, the patients would come back and complain about mouth sores. This really hurts, and we had heard nothing.
What do you mean? So who they were complaining to?
They were coming back and telling
like a male doctor?
No, they were telling their physicians,
physicians,
what
okay.
the side effects were from the study drug.
Okay.
So Dr. Rosen went back to, the company was called Taiho, went back to Taiho and said, we're getting a lot of feedback on this drug, and Taiho's like, wow, nobody here said anything. So they went to their patients in Japan and had them open their mouths, and they all had the mouth sores, but they hadn't said anything because they don't complain.
Interesting.
So you have to consider also kind of the
cultural sensitivity,
the cultural background of your patient and how liable they are, and just be aware of that, because that's a very tough. That's, first of all, it's tough as a non-Japanese person for me to appreciate that, but it's even tougher once I realize it. How do I bridge that?
Yes.
So there's a whole myriad of things that contribute to whether people are going to be their own advocates.
Right.
And whether they're going to trust you and the process enough to do what you think is the best.
Right.
So it's just, there's a lot of grace, and there's a lot of reflection, and there's a lot of dint of effort, and you just keep pushing along until you get stuff where it needs to be. So.
Okay, I have some asking for a friend.
Okay.
These aren't my questions.
Okay.
Of
course not. Heaven forfend.
I picked up a course of antibiotics for strep throat the other day, and it felt like the pharmacist handed me a novel's worth of information with my bottle of meds. Do I actually have to read all of it?
So, in a lot of, no, you don't.
I just call. Okay, for people who aren't going to call you, what should I do?
I mean, some of these. Oh boy. Okay.
What should I read on the label?
Answering for a friend.
Yeah, thanks.
So basically, that information, if you understand it, is helpful. Mm-hmm. Even if it's written in language that purportedly somebody who's not medical can get.
Yes.
At the end of whatever they handed you is probably a single page that says, here's this, here's that. Don't go through the whole, go to the end where it talks about the practical stuff.
Okay.
What you need to know.
Yeah, what's the practical stuff?
What you need to know when you start a new medication is, what can I expect to feel? Mm-hmm. When do you want to hear from me?
Right.
And how will I know it's working?
Mm-hmm.
So focus on those things.
Okay.
So if I'm going to give you something and I say to you, like there's an antibiotic that we use sometimes for H. pylori infections that has a horrible reaction with alcohol. So if I'm going to say to you, you may not drink alcohol while taking this, your question is going to be why, and I'm going to say because it will make you profoundly ill.
Right. That's an actual deterrent.
Yeah,
yes.
As I told one patient, you won't die, but you'll wish you could. So, ask what you can expect to feel.
Yes.
Ask one thing that especially in oncology, and we haven't even talked about caregivers who are so dear to my heart, but in oncology, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And so you don't know if this is significant and if your doctor needs to know. It's dependent upon your healthcare provider to say to you, here's what I need to hear from you.
Yes, yeah.
If you have a fever greater than 101,
Right.
if you have shaking chills, if you have any kind of drainage or foul-smelling urine or anything that doesn't look right.
Yeah, or if you have a gut feeling that something's not right.
Exactly. But give them parameters.
Yes, yes.
So that they can go forth with confidence.
Right.
Otherwise, they're
Right,
just
because
going
if they expect, like, listen, you might have a little diarrhea. Okay, great. It's all that expectation.
Yeah, but instead of saying that, you might have a little diarrhea, say, notify me if you're having more than 4 loose stools a day.
Very specific. Send
Yeah.
me photos on text. Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe not a photo, but... Okay.
We have slightly different careers.
Yes.
I get those photos.
I know you do.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I'm trying to think of what else is on the label. Sometimes it says things like whether to have a medication with food.
Well, that's important.
Okay, so that's important.
But that'll be on the bottle.
Right.
So
Not
the bottle is like, there's a blitz of
Right.
of labeling on the bottle, which
Right.
now the automatic ordering
Sure.
labeling device kind of spits all this out and you just tap
Right.
it all on the bottle. So those are probably more important and accessible to patients
Right.
than reading a handout.
Agree, especially when it lists like every single. Are you kidding? Sometimes it has even the organic compound, the molecular structure is on that
I got
handout.
nothing. Yeah. Oh, one thing though that is interesting, if you ever have, one thing I value is on these labels, on the very bottom, it tells you what the pill inside should look like.
Oh,
It'll say oval scored H25 on one side.
Uh-huh.
If you've ever got a patient who's calling you and you're having an unexpected problem with something, have them read that to you and line it up with what's in their bottle.
oh, interesting.
Maybe 1 out of 1,000 times the wrong thing is in that bottle. Maybe 1 out of 10,000 times if you're in a really good setting. But that descriptor is there for your protection.
Right.
And it seems pointless unless you need to know that what you are taking is what the label says you're getting.
No, that seems like an like critical part
Pretty
of
important.
verification.
Yeah, pretty important.
Okay, break down this for me.
Okay.
Does it matter if my drug is generic or brand?
There are some, so there's the old school thinking and then there's the newer school thinking. There are some compounds where I encourage people, historically people are encouraged to stay with one brand. One of them is thyroid supplements.
Okay, yes.
So you basically, you're regulating somebody on a supplement, and a generic may have a slightly different composition. There's a difference is allowed in the generic. It could be 5%, or there's a range. So a compound has the same ingredients, must have the same ingredient, but it could have a slightly different absorbability, or maybe the other stuff they added is slightly different. So in testing, the generic is proven to have the same drug and to deliver it within the range. So the more acute management of something is, the more precise it is, the more patient-driven or drug-level-driven it is, the more important it is to stick with one product.
Okay.
So for patients on levothyroxine, for example,
Which is a thyroid med, yeah.
which was known as Synthroid, find whatever brand you're using and stay with it.
Okay.
And request it when you request prescription refills.
Okay. And you can request it.
Right.
Yeah, as the patient. Yeah.
For stuff that is a little more general, I don't have a difficulty with generics. Having said that, there have been many, many recalls the last 4 or 5 years from generics that are produced kind of offshore, if you will. So I think in America, people are being a little more circumspect in terms of choosing what generics that they employ. But most generics are not produced here. And so there might be more variability than we would find acceptable. Which is not to say you stomp into the pharmacy and demand brand drug all the time, because
Right.
really, for the most part, that isn't necessary.
Right.
But this is another opportunity where you partner with your pharmacist.
Yeah, have that conversation.
Yeah. Where you say, a couple years ago I was on this and it got recalled and it made me a little apprehensive. Can you
Right.
tell me how I can know this is okay?
Right.
And like I said, we are yearning for somebody to ask us something. You know,
The lonely pharmacist.
yeah, we don't just want to sit back there with a little white smock with the collar.
You
and
don't?
count by fives. No, we don't. We want somebody to use all that stuff we spent all that time acquiring.
Wait, I want to go back to the label though for a second because
Oh,
it
okay.
does say, I just want to say when I'm thinking about a label on one of my prescription bottles, it says like take something twice a day.
Right.
I do want to remind people those instructions are important.
Yes.
Yeah. So
completely.
don't ignore those. Like those are
No.
important. And also take it for as long as it says.
Certainly.
Okay.
Especially with antibiotics.
Yes.
Something that's treating a disease or and there are groups of things you shouldn't stop abruptly. You shouldn't
Yeah.
go off an anticoagulant,
An anticoagulant's like a blood thinner.
a blood thinner,
Yeah.
unless you're expressly told to stop
Yes.
the dose.
Yes.
You shouldn't be willy-nilly with that. A lot of these kind of mood stabilizers and medications for anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
you be very circumspect. Make sure you have backup on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just call your provider because
Yeah.
you can go on nice little regimens to gradually go off, go
Yes.
up, etc.
Right.
Okay, our number one asking for a friend.
Okay.
Friends. Is it actually true that you can't drink alcohol while you're on antibiotics, or is that something just my mom told me in college? Do you notice that I'm not making eye contact with anyone
We
in
had
the
the
room?
same mom, didn't we? There are some antibiotics you can't drink alcohol with.
Right.
So, as I said, metronidazole,
Yeah,
Flagyl,
just Flagyl, yeah.
you'll be sorry. So,
So
there's
sad.
there are some for which that's a legitimate concern. Having said that, I treat the whole patient, and I believe that things in moderation that add to your joy and your appreciation of your life and better equip you to manage the bumps in your health in your health management are okay. But I'm not recommending anybody get blind drunk and do tequila shots while they're on an antibiotic.
Or on anything.
On
Just kidding.
anything, exactly. But if you want to have a glass of wine with dinner and you're on Augmentin, I'm not feeling that that's problematic.
Right.
If there's a specific prohibition about or a contraindication, you will know.
Yes.
You know, the rest of it is just kind of verbiage. And it points to me more as a practical person and a human being. It points to me more to good decision making, right? Just live your life, live it with elegance and class and grace, and try not to do anything stupid.
This conversation is about so much more than medications.
Isn't everything?
Yes.
But try not to abuse your body
Right.
in any way, shape, or form. But also find joy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of patients with an oncology diagnosis come in and they're going to go off all sweets and all this and all that.
Right.
And I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
you've got to find a place where you can still feel joy.
Right. And
How are
sometimes
you-
the finding joy also means finding relief from suffering.
Yes.
So that you can,
Right.
find and feel the joy.
Yeah. I mean, kind of the overarching thing I said about careers and about patient care is expect more.
Yeah.
Expect more. Ask
Yeah.
for more. Look for more. You deserve more. So.
I love that, obviously. Okay. Couple of just quick questions. There's so much, as you know, conflicting information on the internet, social feed. I kind of really want to ask you this in particular, especially about supplements and herbs.
Oh, God. Okay.
1 minute I'm supposed to I think people feel like it's very binary. Like I should be that there's a real difference between taking an FDA approved cholesterol drug versus and I should ditch those and I'll take my supplement. And I'm not even saying it has to be either or, but what's the best way even just to assess this sort of kind of a lot of this landscape where there's a lot kind of hitting us in the face?
Well, you've mentioned a couple different things. The internet is a dangerous place.
Always.
And people need to understand, particularly if you've gotten a bad diagnosis, that you have to be, it's a discipline. You can go on the internet and you can terrify yourself and undermine your care in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So you have to discipline yourself to step back from that precipice and not cross.
Right.
Because, there are a lot of reputable or websites and different places where you can find vetted
Yes.
and validated information about your question.
Right.
Chat rooms and any kind of advertisements and all these woohoo kind of supplements and smoke and mirrors, I would encourage people to be very discerning with that and to avoid it if at all possible.
And again, you can talk about this with Mel as your pharmacist.
Yeah,
You can talk
talk
about
about
this
it with
with your
anything. Yeah.
with your doctor, with your nurse. I mean,
Right.
it's hard to tell people to not to go on the internet or not to kind of access social media, but with a judicious lens and also just partnering, right?
Right.
Don't just go down the hole. invite a friend to look at it with you, bounce it off, audit it, self-audit
Exactly.
it. So,
Ask-
but it's helpful.
Yeah, ask somebody, what websites can I trust?
Yeah, because there's a lot.
And I'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mayo Clinic has one. The American Cancer Society has one. There's a lot of reputable websites where you can learn about your disease.
Yes.
Things that don't have that kind of gravitas, don't
Right.
have that kind of label of legitimacy.
Yeah.
I would avoid those.
Yes.
And know
Especially
that
if they're selling you something.
Know that very few people with a positive outcome go on and post about it.
Right.
You're hearing
Right.
from people who had trouble.
Right.
And you have no idea what the backstory is, and it will demoralize you, make you frightened, and
Right.
not advance your care in any positive way. Because we're in California, one thing I see is people who want to treat their disease with only supplements, and who will turn their backs on validated and effective therapies and try to treat with just supplements. In our world, especially in research, we would encourage patients to hold off on that until we have established their tolerance to their care. Supplements are not benign. They can change blood sugar.
What's an example of a supplement, I guess? Like
Okay,
magnesium?
St. John's wort.
Okay, St. John's wort. Okay,
So
good.
St. John's wort is a mild kind of anti-anxiety med, kind of mildly bumps serotonin levels, but it also interacts with other drugs.
Yes.
There's
Talk
all
top.
these pathways through the liver that
Yeah.
drugs get metabolized by, and drug interactions are when those pathways get turned off and on.
Right.
So you can either like close the 405 freeway and everything backs up, which is what a drug that inhibits a pathway
Yeah.
does, or suddenly it's open and you're shooting down the carpool lane and you never thought you would get there, and that's a drug that encourages the breakdown
Right.
of the drug you're taking. So all of these drugs have drug interactions, and supplements are no exception. When I am asked about patients to use supplements, some of them are time honored, like Chinese herbs and stuff. A lot of those are helpful, but you can't go into this in a vacuum.
Right.
You have to know what you're doing.
Right. And I also say, you know, because this came up with when Ashley Busatil was on, when she was talking about being a hospitalist, you show up to the emergency room. You show up to meet, you know, Dr. Dinolfo to talk about your chemotherapy regimen. You have to tell us everything that you're on. So whether you got it at a pharmacy or supplement, it's so important to tell us, because all of these medications interact.
Yes, they do. And they can also, there are supplements that can cause bleeding.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are supplements that can raise your blood sugar.
Right.
So I'm not saying you can't have supplements.
Right.
I'm saying supplements are one piece of your treatment.
I agree.
And it's a piece that needs to be wielded
Yes.
by experts. And it's another place where the internet will get you in a heck of a lot of trouble.
Right.
So be judicious, be cautious, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
You know, most of my patients need something that actually deters the cancer.
Right.
If they want to take a supplement because it gives them more energy or helps them sleep at night, I have no objection to that. Of course.
Right, as long as it's safe.
Right.
I think so. This is the last kind of question I'm going to ask you, is because I think you especially have this expertise. You know, you're talking about kind of starting with compounds. I think sometimes I encounter a reluctance to take, let's say, a medication, let's say for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and patients might object because they feel like it's not, quote, natural. Right? And so they're more comfortable taking an herbal supplement, feeling like that's more natural because it more resembles like a plant or an herb. Am I the only one that encounters this?
Right.
So I just like to remind people that that compound that you are starting with in that research lab, right? It's all natural, right? And just because it's gone through being studied, right? And, you know, gone through experiments and, you know, just rigorous, you know, sort of testing and validation, it doesn't mean it's not natural. And even if it's, you know, scaled and fabricated and sold in a store, it's just as natural as that unregulated supplement. And I'm only bringing that up to say that have a conversation with us. Like, to your point, like, don't say no to a chemotherapy drug because it's not, quote, natural, right? I don't know if you kind of encounter this.
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right, because there are a lot of things people use to treat disease.
Yes.
You know, foxglove is a flower from which we derive digitalis.
That's right.
So
Love
there are things that were out there in the world that people were grinding in their mortar and pestles and
Yeah.
giving to people long
Botox.
before they were available in a bottle as a pill.
Right.
So and a lot of these compounds are a springboard. Now we have a lot of incredibly innovative labs that can look at a compound and go, oh, this is very interesting. What would happen if we added a fluoride here? What would happen if we did this and that? And they kind of altered the chemistry of it, but the baseline was there.
Yeah.
And there's a chemotherapy drug that what started about 10, 12 years ago that was from sea snail slime, I think. And I had to write up something about how to prepare it. And I said, it has to be in normal saline. It can't be in dextrose. Know that sea snails love salt water. That was how I taught the team to treat it properly. So yes, many of them have as their origins something organic and natural.
We're organisms.
Yeah. And it's all part of a whole.
Yeah, it's all part of the whole. Anyway, sorry to go down that tangent, but I just think it's interesting. But I also just want to remind people, this is where the conversation is so helpful. You know what I mean? Come bring the conversation just so we can talk about it. But it also reminds me, with all due respect, that like medications are incredibly complex. Like the things that you're talking about that are going over my head.
There's nothing went over your head.
It's true. It's there.
It's ridiculous.
It's very
Nothing went
complex.
over- no.
That's not true. Okay, Mel, we're almost done. Don't worry.
Okay.
But from the
I'm not
rooftops, you get a
worried.
rooftops question because you are always sort of sounding your barbaric yop. That's a Whitman quote. If you could shout one message from the rooftops, what would it be? She's like, just one.
Yeah, no kidding. Be brave. Be brave. Being sick is not easy,
No, it's not.
but don't give up on yourself, and know that there are people who have devoted their lives to being able to help you and to getting you to the best outcome possible.
Well, what I want to add to that is that you are one of those people.
Thank
and
you.
I see you live your life like this every
Thank you.
single day.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything keeping you up at night about
Nothing
the
that is.
industry, healthcare? Okay, just one.
Oh, wow. Okay. The fact that a lot of the pressure in our country is on providers to cut corners and save money. And there does not appear to be a lot of accountability in pharma or in insurance. And that troubles me a great deal, which is, and probably contributed to the fact that we became fairly vigilante in how we advocated for people.
Right.
And that does really trouble me. It's also a very important like pressure point.
Yes.
We can be impactful. And so, from one standpoint, I'm glad I can have a role to play, although the role is super annoying and shouldn't be necessary. But I'll go there.
Good.
I'll do that.
I know you will.
Yes, I will.
Okay, tell me what gives you hope.
I was at a conference 2 weekends ago for the UCLA kind of oncology research physicians, and all my friends, all these doctors that I know and love, got up and presented their research, and I was blown away how far we've come. When I thought about our understanding of the biology of cancer and what and how we're impacting it has gotten so intimate and so personalized, and the targets they're game changers. So yeah, I was not only hopeful, I was elated. It's just thrilling.
Yeah.
Which brings me back to, this is not your mother's breast cancer. This is not your father's lung cancer. This is something different. Ask for more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been part of it.
Yeah. So
I hope you're as proud of yourself as I am of you.
I'll try.
I'm very glad we finally had a chance to shine a light on the incredible work that you and all of your pharmacist colleagues do.
Thank you.
Every day. And I will say that on behalf of myself, every provider I know,
Thank you.
from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you.
From our audience, I just want to say thanks for leaving us with so many valuable insights and
you're
sharing practical tips
No, I'm
that everyone
happy
can
to.
start using right away. But honestly, more than anything, I just can't thank you enough for who you are. You bring so much passion, wisdom, and empathy to everything you do, and especially how you care for patients. And I think of it every day when I'm in my own clinic. I say, what would Mel do? Which really means it does. It means how would Mel treat this patient? And how would Mel advocate for them?
That's I'm honored. Thank you.
It's the truth, and what really stands out though to me is how much the work you do really just depends on trust. between the patients, the doctors, the care teams, the pharmacists, and that partnership is really, I think, what good medicine is built on.
I agree.
For our audience, you can find links to evidence-based resources in today's show notes in the episode in our description. To our listeners, until next time, stay curious and stay healthy, and we'll see you next time on Medically Speaking. And to Mel, I love you. Thank you so much for being here.
I love you too. Thank you.